Hello and welcome back to Classic Vinyl Podcast. I'm your host, Justin. I'm here with my other host, Tyler.
I'm doing pretty good.
You ready for a little Mamas and the Papas, California Dreamin'?
The sweet mamas and their papas. Yes, I am.
So why don't you tell me a little history on this song? I mean, I know you've heard this song before, but where do you stand with it and everything?
This is another hippie anthem. If I like to use that term, hippie anthem, because it's a song that's very reminiscent of the hippie movement, and I mean everything was all about San Francisco in the 1960s, or at least the late 1960s, right? That's where everyone who was anyone was going to be.
Well, the funny thing about this song is, as much as it did become a so-called hippie anthem or a summer of love anthem or whatever you want to call it, it was written in the early 60s. I mean, it's pretty simple of what it is. I mean, this is, and we'll get into that, this is someone wanting to be back in California where it's nice and warm and the weather's decent.
For sure. And living in the colder climates will do that to you.
Yes, it will, as we well know here in Utah, right?
Yeah.
So let me give you a little history on the Mamas and the Papas. They're an American folk rock group, almost fully American. Do have one Canadian in there. They were formed in 1965 by John and Michelle Phillips, who were married at the time, and they were, of course, in a group called the Journeyman, and Denny Doherty and also Mama Cass Elliott that joined the group were in a band called the Mugwumps. Now, Denny Doherty is the Canadian in the group, but this is still an American group. So Mama Cass Elliott, she was the last to join the group. She had been in the Mugwumps, of course, like I stated. The band was originally going to be called the Magic Circle. Ooh. Circle with Cyrkle. I don't know if that's like the Circle. There was a group called the Circle that had a CY in it as well, but
there's parts of that I love, and there's not all of it.
Yeah, I think the Mamas and the Papas, which they decided to go with, is a better name for the group. But of course, we're speaking with hindsight.
But both of those both of those names for a group fit very nicely with the hippie movement.
Yeah, I don't know if it would have been any different. I mean, sometimes it's about the music anyways, right?
For sure. But hey, you don't have Mama Cass. Well, she probably still would be Mama Cass anyway, right?
I would assume so.
Yeah.
So they had become friends with Barry McGuire, and he actually introduced them to Lou Adler of Dunhill Records, which led to their audition with Lou Adler. The band's first released single was a song called Monday, Monday. It was released in March of 1966. It became the band's only number one hit in the U.S., and it hit number 3 in the U.K.
That's the only number one they had?
Only number one they had.
I'm surprised. These guys have some big hits.
They do. And classically, there's been many troubles in the band, but mainly between John Phillips and Cass Elliott. And you can read a lot into that, but we won't get into that. But with all those band problems, the band recorded 5 albums, and they eventually met their contractual agreement. And with their final album called People Like Us, it was released in November of 71, and that's when the band officially split, and it was over. So from 1966 to 1969, the band recorded 5 albums and released 17 singles. They've released a total of 5 live albums and 23 compilation albums, which is pretty crazy for 5 albums, but
understandably, I think these guys got a following, and so people wanted to hear more, right?
Yeah, and we do kind of make fun of all the compilations that some of these bands put out, but to be completely honest, they are just a cash grab, and a lot of times most of their compilations are a group of the same songs anyways.
Yeah.
Or the same core group of songs. Worldwide sales for the Mamas and the Papas are right about 50 million total albums sold, which isn't too bad at all.
You're respectable.
Yeah, they had 4 of their 5 albums in the top 20 in the U.S. with their debut album, If You Can Believe Your Eyes and Ears, is what it was called. It hit number 1 here in the U.S. It hit number 3 in the U.K. Their second album, which was a self-titled album, hit number 4 in the U.S., number 14 in the U.K. And their third album, called Deliver, hit number 2 in the U.S. and number 30 in the U.K. And those are really the only 3 albums that did really well in the chart. Out of the 17 singles released, 7 of the singles here in the U.S. hit the top 20, with Monday, Monday, like I stated before, hitting number 1. In the U.K., they had 6 hit the top 20, with Dedicated to the One I Love being their top hit in the UK, which reached number 2, which had also hit number 2 in the US as well. So Mama Cass Elliott had a short, successful solo career until she died of heart failure in July of 1974, or there's that ham sandwich thing people talk about, but we'll let you take your own conclusion there. John Phillips died of heart failure in March of 2001. Denny Darty died of kidney failure in January of 2007, which leaves Michelle Phillips as the only surviving member of the band.
And death is coming for her.
I hope not. But,
No.
but the band was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1998, which I think is deservedly so. But that also leaves the question why certain other bands aren't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
For sure.
We've been over that a million times. So do you want to get to the song review?
Let's do it.
And now it's time for the song review.
So today we're doing the Mamas and the Papas and their hit single California Dreamin'. What's kind of funny about this is we said Monday hit number 1 and this one didn't. It's kind of strange because I think this is the song everyone knows.
For sure. I mean, people are familiar with Monday, but not nearly as familiar as they are with California Dreamin'.
I think this one has weathered the test of time a little better, and it's used in a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows, things like that. But so the song California Dreamin' was released on December 8th of 1965. Happy birthday, Jim Morrison.
Happy birthday, Mr. Morrison.
So this was written by John and Michelle Phillips and sang mainly by Denny Darty with the rest of the group backing him up. It was recorded at United Western Studios. That's where they recorded Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys in Hollywood, California, and it was produced by Lou Adler. Now, Lou Adler, I don't know if anybody's heard of him, but he's worked with more people that you can even name, but you've got Carole King, Johnny Rivers, Spirit, the Grassroots, obviously the Mamas and the Papas. He's produced films and TV shows. He's all over the place. So the B-side to California Dreamin' was a song called Somebody Groovy. Now, California Dreamin' reached number 4 in the U.S., number 3 in Canada, and number 23 in the U.K., which is kind of funny because it's definitely an American song, but I guess the whole feeling of it can be anywhere, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So this song was written real early, like I was talking about at the first here. It was written in 1963, and John and Michelle Phillips, they were, of course, married at the time, living in New York City, and it was one particularly cold winter, or maybe just winter. Maybe it seemed cold to Michelle because she was missing California quite heavily and missing the sunny side of California, was very homesick, and that's where this song come from. But the lyrics are pretty straightforward when it comes down to it, what they're about. One interesting thing about this song, and we went through this before, but this song was mainly recorded by the Wrecking Crew as the backup band, and Barry McGuire, who had introduced them to Lou Adler, was the original one to sing this, with Mamas and the Papas singing backing vocals. And it's a very interesting song. I would suggest anyone go listen to it because his voice...
It's darker.
It just doesn't seem right. And the music's exactly the same. It's the same music. The only difference is you've got a harmonica solo in it instead of a flute solo, but you've got Barry McGuire's vocals.
Yeah, and it's a much darker voice. And I thought that the harmonica would add a very different feel to it, and it certainly did. It sounds very different from the flute. It just it sounds like a howling dog that's just so sad.
And see, the harmonica was okay for me. I mean, the flute is kind of historic if you've listened to the song hundreds and hundreds of times like I have, but the voice from Barry McGuire, just that first time it comes on, because the song is the same intro, it's the same everything.
We're on the eve of destruction.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
And I think I was probably introduced to this song somewhere in the 80s, but it did become popular with me during one of my most favorite movies.
Yeah.
Forrest Gump. They play this song. It's while Forrest is stationed in Vietnam and he's writing a letter home to Jenny. And so it really hit home with me then as well. But this song has been certified 3 times platinum in both the U.S. and the U.K. The song itself was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2001. This song's been covered by a number of groups, more than I can name, but some of the famous ones are America, the Beach Boys, the Carpenters, quite a few people. And like I stated earlier, you hear it in movies, you hear it in commercials, you hear it in TV shows. It's all over the place.
Even Meatloaf covered this one.
Did he?
He did, and I like his version. It's it sounds really somber and cold, which we'll get into that when we do our rating.
So, Tyler, after listening to California Dreamin', which you have heard many times before,
as has anybody who's listened to classic radio, right?
Yeah, and it is a little bit different for us on this podcast because a lot of the songs are your first time hearing them, or you've heard him in passing, but not a ton. But this one you know fairly well. So after
Tons of radio play.
So after sitting down and listening to this one with the purpose of reviewing it, what are your thoughts on the song?
So this song, it has this acoustic guitar open, just a little bit of an intro, and it's real sweet. And then the vocals start in, and you have, I don't even know the singers, like to say who's singing which part, but we listened through it with the Barry McGuire, and he really throws it for a loop. He adds a whole new dimension.
What's strange about that is normally when you hear other versions of songs, they're completely different, but it's the same song.
It's the exact same song. In fact, we were talking about that while we were listening. You said that this is the original backtrack, right?
Correct.
Yeah, all the backing, everything's the same instruments, the same backup vocals. They basically just took Barry McGuire's track and cut it.
Yeah, and Denny Doherty's vocal track, they put him on, and then they took the harmonica off and put the flute solo on instead. That's what they did.
Yeah, and it just plays like a very different song. This one's much more peaceful and upbeat, and upbeat's a really strange thing to say, because when you listen to the lyrics and you hear like the tone that they're talking about, it's a very melancholy song. It is homesickness. If you've ever met somebody who grew up in California and they moved to a different part of the country that doesn't get all that sunshine, they get real homesick for that sunshine. It's almost like talking to somebody from Seattle and they're only happy when it rains. Have you ever met somebody that comes from the Pacific Northwest and they're just like depressed people when the sun's out, but they really cheer up when it rains? It's a strange phenomenon. I've known a few people like that, and this song is all about that. So when you find somebody that's just homesick for California and those bright sunny beaches, this rings true. And let's see, as far as the instrumentals go, excellent work. Their percussion seems to be mostly tambourine. I'm not picking up a whole lot of, I suppose there's drums, but it didn't really stand out as much as the tambourine. And the tambourine, I gotta say, for being such a garbage instrument before doing this podcast, it's really grown on me. That's the one instrument of, I'd say, the last year that has really grown on me, that I'm like, okay, I'm not a big fan. Like, it seems like the tambourine's what you give to the bass player's girlfriend so that she can be part of the band, right? But I'm seeing some use with the tambourine in some of these songs, and maybe it's intentional. Maybe you're giving me these songs just like, hey, Ty, you need to enjoy the tambourine. It's working.
That hasn't been my plan, but if it's working, I'm happy with it.
Yeah. And then we get to that solo, and it took me for a second there. I'm like, okay, is this because it's a real low, and I thought, is this an oboe? The clarinet? No, it's a flute, and boy, it's masterfully done. And then the flute goes on for its own solo and just completely rocks it. This song is it's amazing to listen to it and go along with it. It's got such a sing-songy, upbeat, happy tone to it. With the music and the way that they're singing, but then you listen to what the lyrics are, and it is just pure melancholy homesickness. There's something that's this is like a Sour Patch Kid, sweet and sour at the same time, and it's so opposite, but it fits and it works, and I find it delicious. What are your thoughts on this?
The one thing I'm gonna say is I don't recall hearing the Barry McGuire version before we listened to it today, and I don't know if it's because I know this song so well or what, but I think everybody needs to go listen to that because it's just the strangest thing I've ever heard. Mm-hmm. And Barry McGuire, you started about the Eve of Destruction. That's a good song.
Yeah.
And that's really all I know him from, but his voice doesn't fit this song. So I think it's
California Dreamin' on such a winter's day.
I think it's a good thing they went this version of it. But that being said, I love the finger picking to start. That's P.F. Sloan doing the finger picking on the acoustic guitar, the Wrecking Crew. It's got great harmonies. I mean, that's what we always want to talk about when we're talking about the Mamas and the Papas, right? That's the one thing they do better than most groups is they have that amazing harmony. The one thing I noticed about the song musically is the bass in it is very nice and thick, and I'm not sure if it's Carol Kay playing on the bass, but I think it probably is. I could be wrong, but I haven't researched that. Somebody can reach out to us and tell us. The acoustic throughout the song is good. The tambourine starts in that first verse, which I really like, and then you've got that flute solo that's actually an alto flute, and it's played by Bud Shank. To me, that's one of the biggest pieces that make this song. And that flute almost gives you. You said the song's kind of upbeat, but that flute does give you that kind of melancholy feel. It really does.
Yeah.
And I thought in the Barry Maguire version that the harmonica wasn't bad. It didn't strike me as awful, but number one, the vocals on here from the Mamas and the Papas make the song, but that flute is a big portion of it. And this is a song that always gives me that summer feeling. This is a song that there's a group of songs for me that do that, and this is one in that group. I've never lived in California. I don't particularly dislike or love California. I don't really have an opinion. I've been there a few times, and it's nice and warm, and it's also pretty busy. But at the time, if you put yourself in the time, that was the place to be. If you were a loving hippie, loving into music, drugs, whatever it was, the times they were a-changing, and that's where you wanted to be. And this song gives you all of that feeling. It really does. At least it does for me. And I think it's an excellent song. It's without a doubt overplayed, even still to this day, but it's still one that doesn't really bother me when it's played.
Doesn't have the ear burn, does it?
No, it doesn't for me. And I don't know why. It is kind of a short song. It's not, it's easy on the ears, everything. Yeah. So I enjoy it, and I've always enjoyed this song.
I think that the reason why it doesn't give the ear burn is because it's so smooth. The harmonies are beautiful. The instruments are so mellow, and that flute is just like smooth, creamy chocolate. It is so perfect.
So do you want to get to the song rating?
Let's rate it.
Song rating.
All right. If this is your first time listening, our rating system is pretty simple. Our rating system, 0 to 10. 0 is a terrible song, and we won't listen to it no more. And the best is a 10. And number 5 being smack dab in the middle. With that in mind, I'm going to rate this one a solid 8. It's not my absolute favorite song. There is something about this song, and it is that sweet and sour thing, that knocks it down a little bit for me, because I really like a song that matches up. But this one, once again, it is Sour Patch Kids. This is like really delicious, even though it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite candy, but I can appreciate it while I'm chewing on it. I'm a fat kid. I enjoy candy. So this one's a solid 8 for me. I really appreciated listening to the other versions with this. It just kind of helps show that this version really is the one that's the chart topper. It's not... I don't like most of the covers as much as I like this one. I really like Meatloaf's version. His really matches up because it doesn't really grasp, it doesn't capture that summer feeling the way this one does, right? And that's what's strange to me, is that it's written as a homesickness song, and Meatloaf sounds like he's really mourning and feeling that homesickness. So it matches up with the lyrics, but it's not as fun. And this song is just so much fun with the Mamas and the Papas. So that's where I put it. Where do you put it, Justin?
We're pretty close on this. I've always enjoyed this song. It's, like I said, it's overplayed in a good way, I guess I should say. I rate this song an 8.5. It's definitely going to be on most of my playlists that I break out early spring when I'm in my winter doldrums that help me kind of feel a little more upbeat. So it's always been a good song. It's short and sweet. It's to the point. It gives you that great summer feeling, and it is what it is. Great song.
For sure.
So that's the Mamas and the Papas and California Dreamin'. And give us a shout and let us know what you think at classicvinylpodcast@gmail.com. And once again, like always, we really do appreciate you tuning in and giving us a chance, because we obviously don't know what we're talking about. We just speak what we feel and what our hearts tell us and what our minds tell us. And that's what music's about, right?
Yeah, we're just having a good time doing it.
So until next time, we'll see you later.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to Classic Vinyl Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Classic Vinyl Podcast for updates, and also share us with your music-loving friends.